Welcome to our deep dive today. We're headed to Kentucky to explore the Lost River Cave.
Oh, cool.
It's a spot where, geology and history and nature all come together, kind of in a surprising way.
Yeah,
Ready to go spelunking.
I am ready. Let's go spelunking.
Okay.
What I think is so fascinating about this Lost River Cave is that it's not just like one cave.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole system.
Yeah.
7 miles of cave passages. And woven through all of that is this river
Wow.
that like disappears and then comes back. It's like magic.
So, okay, how does something like that even happen?
Right.
A disappearing river.
Yeah.
I mean, our sources really go into the geology of it, like starting millions of years ago.
Yeah, millions of years. You got to start with the landscape itself. It's what's called karst topography.
Okay.
Basically, water has been sculpting this rock for eons, creating these sinkholes and underground streams and even caves like the Lost River Cave. It's all about the type of rock, mostly chert and limestone.
Yeah.
That was formed when this whole area was underwater, way back in the Mississippian period.
So because this type of rock is soluble, the water slowly eroded it over millions of years,
Exactly.
creating these crazy underground passageways. Right. So that makes the whole disappearing river thing a little less magical,
Right.
but still really cool. Like, it shows you how these seemingly basic geological processes can create these totally mind-boggling natural wonders.
Yeah, and those processes are still continuing today, still shaping that cave today.
Wow.
But what's really cool to me is the human element of all this. Like, imagine people were using this cave system
Oh, yeah.
for shelter over 10,000 years ago, back in the Paleo-Indian period.
So they were using it when Kentucky looked totally different.
Right.
Like way cooler, wetter, mammoths and mastodons roaming around, totally different world. What do we know about how they were using the cave?
Well, think about it. They wanted protection from the elements.
Right.
A place to stay warm and safe. And they left behind some clues.
Like what?
Like Clovis spear points. These beautifully crafted stone tools. They're about 13,000 years old and were used to hunt those massive Ice Age creatures.
That's amazing. It's like these artifacts give us this peek into their lives. And then as the climate changed
Right.
and the megafauna disappeared, people kept adapting. I read that during the Archaic period, which started around 8,000 years ago,
Yeah.
the way they used the cave changed too.
Absolutely. There's evidence that they were being more selective in their hunting, focusing on smaller game and gathering plants. We even found a Dalton point,
Oh, wow.
a spearhead that's about 8,000 years old. So you see this continuous thread of humans being there,
Wow.
adapting within the cave over thousands of years.
It makes you realize that the cave story isn't just about the geology. It's a story of human connection to this landscape going back thousands of years. And that connection continues with indigenous peoples who use the cave too.
Yeah.
Probably for shelter, food, maybe rituals.
Yeah.
Shows you how deeply connected human history is to nature. And speaking of human history, I'm sure you're curious about how the Lost River even got its name.
Right.
It's not hard to imagine these early European settlers being totally baffled by a river that just disappears underground.
Like where to go.
Yeah, right. Standing there scratching their heads. So that mystery is probably where the name comes from. Lost River.
Exactly. It's a name that reflects that wonder, that bewilderment that this unique river inspired.
Yeah.
But it also marks a shift in how humans interact with the cave.
Okay, because up until then, indigenous people understood and lived in harmony with this cave, right?
Right.
But then with these settlers, the cave started to become part of local lore.
Yeah.
And its history changed.
Yeah.
Speaking of change, I can't wait to talk about how the Lost River Cave became strategically important in the Civil War.
Interesting.
It's hard to imagine this peaceful place being caught up in conflict.
Yeah. It's a reminder that even the most hidden parts of the world can be touched by those human events.
Yeah.
Both Union and Confederate forces used the cave during the war. And we have actual proof that they were there.
Like what? Hidden weapons, secret messages on the walls.
Not quite that exciting, but we do have inscriptions left by Union soldiers. Names, ranks, even their company names.
Wow.
Etched into those cave walls. It's like a message from the past. A window into their lives during such a crazy time.
It's wild to think that these soldiers fighting in one of the biggest moments in American history sought refuge in this cave that sheltered people for thousands of years.
I know.
It's like this silent witness to history, from ancient hunters to Civil War soldiers. And speaking of stories, I know there's some really cool legends about the cave.
Oh, absolutely. Some more believable than others. For example, there are stories about John Hunt Morgan,
Okay.
the Confederate officer. They say he used the cave as a hideout.
Wait, so like a secret Confederate lair in the Kentucky wilderness? That sounds like a movie.
It does, doesn't it? But as cool as it is, it's probably more legend than fact.
Oh.
I mean, the Union had such a strong presence in that area back then. It doesn't seem likely that he could have used the cave without them knowing.
So a case of history versus legend.
Right.
I still love that the cave has these stories.
Mm.
Makes it even more intriguing. But okay, get ready for a big shift here. We're about to go to the 20th century.
Okay.
Things are going to get a lot more lively. Because Lost River Cave is about to become a nightclub.
That's right. During the Great Depression, an entrepreneur named Jimmy Stewart had this idea. Remember, air conditioning wasn't really a thing back then.
Right.
So he thought a place where people could escape the heat and see some live music.
Okay.
So the Cavern Nite Club was born in 1934.
Hold on. A nightclub. Inside a cave.
Yeah.
I'm trying to picture this.
Yeah.
Was it like a dimly lit speakeasy
Mm-hmm.
or a full-on party scene with like flashing lights and a dance floor?
I think somewhere in between. They had a stage, dance floor, a bar, all the nightclub stuff.
Okay.
But inside this ancient cave. And it was popular. People loved it, especially in the summer.
I bet. It must have been like stepping into another world.
Yeah.
But how did they even power a nightclub in a cave in the 1930s? Were they running extension cords for miles?
Okay, this is where it gets ingenious. They powered the whole thing with a water wheel connected to an alternator.
Oh, a water wheel, like pioneer days?
No, right?
That's amazing.
They were ahead of their time in a way, even if sustainability wasn't the goal.
So what about the music? Swanky jazz club, down-home honky-tonk.
It seems like a mix. They had something for everyone. And
Yeah.
they got some pretty big names. Dinah Shore,
Really?
even the NBC Orchestra.
Wow.
Billboard magazine even said it was the only air-conditioned nightclub in America in 1939.
So Lost River Cave was the place to be, literally and figuratively.
Uh-huh.
It's crazy how this place has transformed so much over time.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing the party couldn't last forever.
You're right. By the late 50s, things like FM radio and air conditioning becoming more widespread led to the club closing. 1962, it shut down. End of an era for Lost River Cave.
Sounds like it went into hibernation after all that excitement.
Yeah.
This isn't the end of the story, though.
Right.
Because I know Lost River Cave's thriving again, but in a whole new way.
Exactly. The story doesn't end with the Cavern Nite Club.
Okay.
It's just the beginning of a new chapter.
Yeah.
To get into that, we got to talk about what happened after the club closed.
Okay.
The period of neglect and the incredible work to bring it back to life.
Okay, so that sounds like the perfect place to pick up in part 2.
Yeah.
We'll explore how Lost River Cave went from a forgotten relic to this amazing place it is today. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our exploration of Lost River Cave. Last time we kind of left off with the cave entering a period of, well, not its best moment.
Yeah, it's sad to think about a place with such a rich history.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sheltered humans for thousands of years,
Yeah.
hosted a nightclub, and then it ended up neglected and forgotten.
Yeah.
What happened after the Cavern Nite Club closed in '62?
Well, the cave basically fell apart. By the 80s, it had become a dumping ground.
Really?
This natural wonder filled with trash. It's heartbreaking.
That is heartbreaking. So like this perfect example of how we as humans can take nature for granted.
Yeah.
But thankfully, that's not where the story ends.
Right.
I know that today it's this thriving ecotourism spot.
You're right. It really shows what community action can do
Yeah.
and how dedicated people can be to saving these places. In 1990, this group formed, the Friends of Lost River Cave.
Cool.
And they partnered with Western Kentucky University to start the huge job of restoring it.
So they were like the superheroes of Lost River Cave.
Yep.
Swooping in to save the day. What did that involve? Cleaning up a whole cave system sounds like a ton of work.
It was. Volunteers removed tons of garbage, cleaned the walls,
Yeah.
and stopped more pollution.
Okay.
But they did even more than that.
Wow.
They realized that to really fix the cave, they had to address the area around it too. So they built wetlands to filter the water runoff before it reached the cave.
So they weren't just cleaning up. They were trying to stop future problems.
Yeah.
They were thinking long term about the health of the cave for years to come.
Absolutely.
That's impressive. Did it work?
Oh, yeah, it did. These wetlands haven't just protected the cave.
Okay.
They've become this whole ecosystem supporting all kinds of plants and animals. It's a great example of how we can help boost biodiversity.
I love that. It's not just about saving it. It's about making it better.
Yeah.
So after all that work, When did Lost River Cave reopen?
1997. The cave was reborn as this ecotourism place, but this time it was about showing off its beauty and teaching people about this unique ecosystem.
So instead of a dance floor, we've got walking trails and exhibits. What are the main attractions now?
Well, one of the biggest is the underground boat tour,
Really?
the only one in Kentucky.
Wow.
It gives people this amazing view of the cave. Imagine floating on the Lost River surrounded by these lit-up formations.
That sounds magical. Like stepping into another world. What kind of formations do you see?
Oh, so many. You'll see stalactites. They look like chandeliers hanging from the ceiling.
Cool.
Stalagmites rising up from the floor. And flowstone that looks like frozen waterfalls. And the guides know everything. They point out cool stuff and tell stories.
So it's not just sightseeing, it's educational too.
Right.
Perfect for our deep dive listeners.
Yeah.
But the boat tour is only one part of it.
Yeah.
What else can people do there?
Tons of stuff. Hiking trails through the woods, a chance to see the landscape above ground, and they even have butterfly habitats.
Butterfly habitats. So they're not just protecting what's there.
Right.
They're making new ecosystems.
Exactly.
Wow, they went above and beyond to make this place a haven for wildlife.
And they're big on education. Lost River Cave has programs for all ages.
Really?
School kids learn about the geology, the ecology, why conservation matters.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
This place was once a dumping ground.
Right.
And now it's this center for learning about the environment, like a phoenix rising,
Yeah.
a sign of hope.
Absolutely.
But what about those troglodytes? We mentioned those earlier. These creatures that live in total darkness.
Oh, yeah.
I got to know more about them.
The troglodytes. They're fascinating.
Yeah.
No sunlight, limited food, a world completely different from ours. And yet, life still finds a way to thrive there.
It's mind-blowing. What kind of creatures are we talking about? Giant spiders? Blind salamanders? Something even weirder.
Well, not quite giant spiders, but they are pretty unique. You've got cave crickets,
Okay.
paler, and with longer antennae than the ones above ground. And then there's blind cavefish. Some have lost their eyes completely. They've evolved to use other senses. Touch, vibrations.
It's like a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
It's amazing how they've adapted. But it must be hard to balance letting people visit
Yeah.
with protecting these ecosystems.
It is.
How do you let people see this amazing place without bothering the creatures who live there?
It's a challenge for sure, but the Friends of Lost River Cave are really careful about it.
Okay.
They limit how many people are on the boat tours,
Hmm.
and the lights are designed to be as dim as possible to minimize disruption.
That's good to hear. It sounds like they're serious about doing ecotourism the right way.
Yeah, they are. And it's not just about the cave itself. They've done a lot to restore the area around it,
Okay.
planting native plants and making habitats for all kinds of wildlife.
It's a big picture approach, recognizing that the cave's part of a larger system.
Exactly.
It's like they're combining conservation, education, and recreation.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of research, what kind of scientific work is going on at Lost River Cave?
Well, karst systems are really complex
Right.
and so important for our water. So researchers are studying things like water quality, groundwater flow, how human activity impacts these fragile environments.
So it's not just about the cave itself.
No.
It's about understanding the bigger picture,
Right.
how these underground systems affect us up here.
Exactly. And the data they collect helps protect these ecosystems. But what's really cool is they're studying the troglodytes.
Oh, right. The creatures that live in the cave.
Yeah.
So they're not just looking at rocks and water. They're studying these amazing life forms that have adapted to this environment. It's like Lost River Cave's a living lab.
Uh-huh.
We can learn so much about nature there.
Absolutely.
And it all started because of these people who wouldn't let this place disappear.
It's a pretty remarkable story. Shows what we can do when we put our minds to it.
Yeah.
And how important it is to protect these places.
Well, it sounds like we've only just started to uncover what makes Lost River Cave so special.
Right.
I'm already thinking about planning a trip. But before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your final thoughts on what makes this place so amazing,
Yeah.
both for scientists and for just regular people.
What really gets me is how connected everything is at Lost River Cave.
Hmm.
The geology, the history, the ecology, the people's stories, it's all woven together.
Yeah.
It reminds us that we're part of nature. And what we do matters.
It's a powerful message, especially now,
Right.
as we deal with climate change and losing biodiversity.
Yeah.
Stories like this remind us how beautiful and fragile our planet is,
Yeah.
and hopefully inspire us to take better care of it. But before we get too deep into that, let's remind everyone we're not done yet.
Yeah, we've got more to explore.
In part 3, We'll wrap up our journey and talk about what we've learned. Maybe even where we go from here.
Sounds good.
So grab some more coffee, get comfy, and get ready for the final part of our Lost River Cave adventure. Welcome back to the deep dive. It feels like we've really gone deep into Kentucky, exploring this hidden world of Lost River Cave.
Yeah.
We've seen how it formed, learned about its crazy history, even met some of those strange creatures that live there, the troglobites.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. From ancient hunters to that nightclub to this ecotourism spot it is today.
Yeah.
Lost River Cave has seen it all.
It really has. Shows you how strong nature is.
Yeah.
And how everything's connected.
I think what stands out to me is how this one place has all these layers of history,
Right.
both human and natural. Makes you think about how we affect the environment.
Absolutely. We saw how close the cave came to being ruined. But then the Friends of Lost River Cave and Western Kentucky University brought it back to life.
It's amazing what they did.
It is.
Shows that we can fix the damage we do and build a better future. It's like a symbol of hope.
It is. A reminder that we can make a difference.
But it's not just about fixing what's broken.
Right.
It's about understanding these ecosystems and learning to live with them.
That's a big one for me. Lost River Cave isn't just pretty to look at. It's where scientists are doing important research on things like water quality and these unique creatures that live there.
And that research can help us protect similar places all over the world.
Exactly.
It's wild to think about. The things we learned from this one cave in Kentucky could have a global impact.
Yeah.
Shows how important science and education are, especially for protecting nature.
And Lost River Cave does a great job of combining that research with education.
Yeah.
Their tours and exhibits teach people so much, get them excited about taking care of these places.
It's like they've found this perfect way to show off the cave's beauty
Yeah.
while also making sure it stays protected.
They're not just saying, look, they're saying learn
Right.
and become a part of this.
What I think makes Lost River Cave so special is how it brings science and nature and human history together.
It really does.
It's like this glimpse into how interconnected everything
a
is.
story of resilience, of restoration, of nature's power to inspire us.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
It reminds us that even when things seem dark, there's always hope. And it challenges us to think about our own part in protecting these places
Absolutely.
for the future. Well, as we come up from our deep dive into Lost River Cave,
Yeah.
I'm left feeling amazed
Me too.
and even more appreciative of our planet.
It reminds you that there's always more to discover, both out in the world and inside ourselves.
That's a great way to put it. Thanks for joining us on this incredible trip to Kentucky.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
If you're ever in the area, we highly recommend checking out Lost River Cave.
It's an experience you won't forget.
And make sure to check out Untold Chronicles on YouTube for more deep dives like this one.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with your friends.